Assalamu alaikum, namaste, sat sri akal, shalom and good day. You are listening to Awaz Community Radio. And today in the studio we have Jim Battle. Who's Jim? You'll find out very shortly. Now, if you want to contact me, you can email me on awazcommunityradio@gmail.com. Our website is www.awazcommunityradio.com. Give me a call on 0161 839 9817. We're on Facebook and Twitter as well. Tweet us at Awaz Radio 122 or type into Facebook Awaz Community Radio. Thank you for listening to Awaz Community Radio with your host today, Saira. Now, my guest today is Jim. Hi, Jim.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Glad, it's your first time here, so a warm welcome.
Thank you very much.
With biscuits as well.
Lovely biscuits.
Thank you. We do our best. Not as good as, I'm sure, sort of homemade Great British Bake Off biscuits, but, thank you, McVitie's.
They're getting there. They're getting there. They're nearly winners.
Nearly winners. So, Jim, can you tell our listeners as to who you are?
Well, I'm Jim Battle. My job at the moment is the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, working with Tony Lloyd, who's the Police and Crime Commissioner, and also the Mayor of Greater Manchester. Our job is to work with Greater Manchester Police, to represent the public to Greater Manchester Police, and to make sure Greater Manchester Police responds to communities and delivers a good quality service that protects our people and makes sure we can go about our daily lives without fear of crime.
Great stuff. So, Jim, can you tell us a little bit more about your background? Where are you from?
Well, I'm a migrant to Manchester. I was born in Bradford, Yorkshire, fantastic place, but not as good as Manchester. I've lived in Manchester now since in Manchester now since about 1986, 85, 86, and this is my home now, and it's a fantastic place. I come from a large family. I've got 8 brothers and sisters. And I've now got 4 grandchildren, which are absolutely fabulous. So I love my family, but I also love my job. And I think you need to have a balance between your family life, your personal life, and your professional life. And I think when you've got that right, I think you can really put something back into your community. And that's what I really enjoy doing.
All right, that's lovely. 4 grandchildren, how lovely.
Yes, that's fantastic. It keeps you young.
Keeps you moving, I'm sure.
It does, fit and young.
So, what inspired you into a career towards the police?
Well, I've been active in local politics within the Labour Party for a long time. I was involved in the trade union movement. I've worked in the voluntary sector. I've worked in Shelter, for example, the housing charity. And I've also worked for the National Housing Federation, which runs and supports housing associations and housing providers. So my background really was in housing as opposed to police. And then I was elected by the people of Ancoats and Clayton onto the City Council. And I became the deputy leader of Manchester Council, which was a great honour. And part of that job was looking at community safety. And that led me to work with Greater Manchester Police and other partners to make sure our communities were safe. So that's how I, if you like, drifted in to being interested in how the police can serve our communities and how we can work together, communities, councils, police and others, to make sure our communities are safe.
So your current position, you've been in it for 2 years as deputy. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role?
Well, the first job of a deputy is always to represent the commissioner when the commissioner's doing other things. So you have to be always ready to step in, and that's a real privilege. Tony Lloyd's a great person, a great leader, and it's a real privilege to work with him. And so I've been working across Greater Manchester with a whole range of people, many community organisations, because we believe that in essence that volunteers and communities are really key to making sure our communities are safe, and therefore we work very closely with those. I also have been working on a very interesting project about how we can make sure that people who suffer from mental illness are properly treated when they come into contact with the police. And I think that's been probably one of the most interesting things I've done, and where we're now working very closely with health providers, the voluntary sector, police and other organisations, again, to make sure together we can make sure people who do suffer from mental health issues are properly cared for. And I think that's a really big step, and I think I'm pleased to say that working with Greater Manchester Police, they've really led the way nationally, showing that we can be a compassionate police force, a police force that is interested in people's welfare, as well as doing some of the very difficult things like solving crime.
How do you feel mental health is being seen as today? Do you think the stigma is reducing around it?
Well, it's come a long way. One of my very first jobs, which was a long time ago, was actually working in mental health services. In fact, at one point in my life, I considered a career working in the mental health services. But the mental health services, when I was a young man, was very much about asylums. There were horrible places. People didn't distinguish between people who were suffering from learning difficulties, for example, for those who were suffering from mental health issues. And at that time, it was felt the best thing to do was to lock them away, lock people with mental health issues and learning difficulties away from communities behind walls. I think things have changed. I think we've learnt that people with learning difficulties do not have mental health issues. They can very happy people, some people do, but no more than the rest of the population. Therefore, we separated that. But I still think, even though we've come a long, long way from those early days when I was working in the mental health services, we've come a long way, but I still think there's a stigma, there's still a fear, there's still an uncertainty. And I've been doing two things this week. One was working with other partners, looking at how we can deal with mental health issues, but also within the Greater Manchester Police, for example. Very brave police officers go about their duties, and they have to do and see things that most of us would never even dream of. It would be our nightmare. And therefore, those officers and staff need support as well. And next week, we've got an awareness week about how people who work within Greater Manchester Police can themselves get support when they need it. There's nothing wrong if you've got mental health issues. There's nothing wrong for turning for help. And those are the stigmas we've got to break. Being big and brave you can be big and brave, but it does have an impact upon you, and it's important, first of all, to understand what that impact is, but then be able to talk to people about what it's doing to you, and in some circumstances get help as well.
Jim, now I'd like to discuss a little bit about what kind of dangers do police officers face in their daily roles?
Well, I think there's been an incredible sad example this week where a really brave officer was standing, if you like, on the thin line between protecting his community and putting himself at danger in the Wirral, where this officer was mowed down by a murderous driver who's stolen the vehicle and was intent to commit further crimes. That officer's family is now going to suffer, and I saw the family on the television last night, and I can't believe anyone, their hearts didn't go out to that family to hear, if you like, the consequences of that crime. Now, officers go out every single day, every single night, and many of them have no idea what that shift will bring. It's how they respond to incidents, and therefore it's incredibly brave and courageous that police officers step forward and put themselves at danger while the likes of me step back and take cover. And that's the ask we give of police. And sometimes I do get a little bit concerned when the media and other people are very critical of police, when they have to make on-the-spot decisions, very quick on-the-spot decisions about protecting themselves and others, and are very critical of that. People criticise them that. I think officers I've come across are fabulous people, are open to being questioned and challenged, but sometimes it goes a bit too far. And I hope this week, where the sad death of the officer in Wirral gives us time to reflect a little bit, to reflect upon what we ask our police officers and staff to do on our behalf, and sometimes they don't come home, and that's a real tragedy, not only for their families but us all as well. I really admire, and every day goes by and I hear something tremendous from officers and staff in Greater Manchester Police. We should be very, very proud of them. I am.
Now, the general perception of the police sometimes can be a little bit negative, especially amongst young people, which I guess has happened in every generation. What is the police doing to challenge those negative perceptions that young people have?
Well, I think one of our key jobs in the Commission, that's Tony Lloyd and myself, is to make sure that the police serve everybody and that no community feels alienated or separated from the police or feel that the police, inverted commas, are picking on them. And we've done a lot of work around stop and search. Now, we work with a whole range of young people who actually say, yes, stop and search is a useful tool for the police to use. If somebody's intent on committing a crime, then it's important the police stop them before they commit that crime. But if police overuse that very special power, then it undermines the confidence in policing. And we've put an app out, which is people can download from our website, which is the Police and Crime Commissioner's website, where people can report if they get stopped by the police and searched. They can then film it on their camera, on their phone, and send it to us, and we can look at that. And if people want to challenge that decision by the police officer, we're happy to follow that up. So we're, if you like, creating a check and balance. So that's one area where we think the engaging with young people. Another area which I think is really important is working with schools and colleges. And we set up two things. One is working within schools where police officers and police staff actually work in schools, attend schools, and in some schools police officers are embedded in the schools. But also we've got a fabulous cadet scheme, and the cadets is really for people over 13 and under 19, and it's a really incredible piece of work. It's probably, as we look around the sort of achievements of Greater Manchester Police, and indeed as our Chief Constable retired, Sir Peter Farhi, one of the great credits to Sir Peter Farhi was insistence that there should be a proper cadet force within Greater Manchester. And in North Manchester we've got a fabulous cadets, and many people from Cheetham Hill and other places are in those cadets. And that gives them an insight into what police work is about, but also gives them a fantastic step on the ladder for their future career. It may not be in the police, but whatever they bring from their experience as a cadet, I'm pretty sure many employers would just be too willing to employ them having that experience, and there's some fabulous people come forward. Building that confidence, building that relationship with young people. And one thing I think everyone has to realise when you're running public services, be it police, hospitals, schools, councils, is that every generation is slightly different, has a slightly different take, and therefore you can never be complacent. And one of the best things you can have is a good pair of ears. You've got to be a good listener to hear what people say and respond to them. And I hope that we are breaking through some of those barriers of the young generation who have a hell of a lot to give and do give a hell of a lot to our communities. And we're only too proud of many young people's contribution. And we want to make sure that every young person feels that Greater Manchester Police and the services they provide are for them. What do you think are the biggest obstacles facing the younger generation today? I think the younger generation today faces the bigger obstacles in their lives than previous generations. I think that it's a really big challenge, and I think those challenges come from all quarters. I think the way in which we've seen government, for example, change the benefit system, which has really taken many young people out of the benefit systems. Now that's very important for young people starting off in life, in able to find their way through without having to be necessarily dependent on their parents, but also that they have an opportunity to set off on their own. That's been undermined, and I think the governments have made some comments which I would not agree with, which is that young people are not paying their way. I believe young people is an investment in the future, and that's what we should be doing. I think young people have challenged through internet and other ways about their own personal protection. The sexting incidents, for example, where young people who are using internet have to be incredibly careful for either the images they put out for themselves, but also sometimes the grooming that comes in to the internet as well. And we've got many examples of young people who have been brought into great danger because of people preying on young people on the internet, and we've been doing a lot of work advising young people about that. And then there's the work around sort of counter-terrorism, which is real as well, where young people are drawn into, if you like, political scenarios which say the solution is violence rather than engagement and democracy. And again, that is a really important challenge for young people, and it's very dangerous for them, and it's for them to navigate their way through that issue is huge. And I think what we'd like to make sure is that the police and other organisations are there very close to young people, engaged in a dialogue, because these issues will come up and they will continue to come up. Parents have got a bigger job today bringing their children up than I ever had, and I think we've got to make sure that we're there for them, parents as well as their children. I think the challenges are huge, and the prospect of young people, for example, getting into work, getting a home, bringing up a family, are greater today than ever before. But on the other side of the coin, I've met many young people who are actually making their way in the world. They are bringing up their families, they're supporting their parents and others in a way that is unimaginable. So two sides of the coin. One, it's a hard task, but I've seen many young people who are getting into a position where they are saying, no matter what you throw at us, we'll get through. And that's a huge response from young people.
Now, Jim, I'd like to ask you, what do you think is great about Greater Manchester?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, I think one of the greatest things about Greater Manchester is that, like me, most people in Greater Manchester have come from somewhere else, either in the UK or across the world. And Greater Manchester's history and its commerce, its business, its entertainment, its sport has all come from across the world. And I think Greater Manchester has captured in one place across Greater Manchester the best of the world, and I think we also give the best of the world as well. So it's a two-way street, and I sometimes despair when I hear politicians, and sadly on a platform in Manchester where the Home Secretary spoke so ungraciously really and disrespectful, I thought, of people who've come and made their home here and arrived in this country with very, very little. In fact, some people turned up with nothing except the clothes they stood up in, and have made a massive contribution to our economy, to our education, to our arts, to everything in our country. I think the Home Secretary should come and spend a day with me in Greater Manchester and see what I see every day. People sharing, people enjoying each other's company, people laughing together, people cooking together, people sharing their sorrows when a tragedy happens, how people come back together, and also people encouraging people to take up good jobs, to contribute, to volunteer, to make their communities better. That's the Greater Manchester I see every single day. And I'm very privileged, and I think I'm very privileged, to have the opportunity of meeting those people. And if only the Home Secretary could spend a few hours with me, coming around Greater Manchester. In fact, we're here in Cheetham Hill. Within 200 yards of this studio, I reckon I can find at least 8 or 9 organisations and volunteers who are putting something back in their community and have probably arrived in the UK 2-3 generations ago or recently, and they're making a fantastic job, making Greater Manchester great. Manchester would not be great if it wasn't for the people, and especially the people who've come here and made their home. I was born in Bradford. My home is Manchester.
So I would just like to reiterate that invitation to Theresa May still stands. Jim is happy to take you around Greater Manchester. Awaz Community Radio is happy to chat to you as well about your trip around Manchester with Jim. So I'd like to say a huge thank you to Jim Battle for coming in and chatting about his role as a Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner for Greater Manchester.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a real pleasure. It's been a very, very nice conversation. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming. I mean, our listeners are going to, I think, really give us positive feedback about this. It's great to hear a lot of positivity as well. You've touched on some very serious issues, but you've also, come in with a really positive can-do attitude.
Well, that's the Greater Manchester approach. Can do Greater Manchester.
That's a Greater Manchester approach. It's a British attitude as well. It is.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're listening to Awaz Community Radio with Saira. If you'd like to give us some feedback, just give us a call on 0161 839 9817 or on Facebook and Twitter. Just tweet at Awaz Radio 122 or catch us on Facebook. Type in Awaz Community Radio. Thank you for listening. Till next time.